Hello, so I've completed the Hardline single player and I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. So this video should be spoiler free. I've removed any cutscenes and it's from an early episode before there are any plot twists, so nothing should be given away. I'll do a second video on the single player that will include anything that would be a spoiler, so comments on the storyline and the plot and the characters. All of that I will put in a second video which will contain spoilers, but this one is spoiler free. Right, so talking in general terms, what we were expecting from Hardline was a visceral single player story, so something with the involvement of the Dead Space series. What we actually get is a good story told in the cutscenes, but very little in the gameplay that actually affects the story. Nothing you do while you're on these levels affects the story at all. The cutscenes will always be the same. And that means a couple of mechanics that are in the game that could have added to the experience are wasted. First of these is collecting evidence. You can find evidence and analyse evidence on the levels, but it doesn't do anything other than give you a badge and give you a battle pack. Other than that, finding evidence doesn't affect the story. In fact, it doesn't even let you work the evidence out. You're literally just collecting items. When you've got all the items, it tells you what the story of those items was. There's no investigation, there's no trying to work things out yourself. It's just spoon-fed. Even the actual location of the evidence is spoon-fed by the mobile phone. The mobile phone is probably the biggest immersion-breaking thing in this game. How can it be a real-world gritty drama when you've got a mobile phone that can spot enemies around the map, can investigate evidence, can spot people who are wanted? It doesn't make any real-world sense. Sure, you can have a mobile phone that you take a picture of a guy and it can tell you if he's got any warrants. But my mobile phone, as far as I'm aware, can't track about 20 people around a map and keep on tracking them when they're on the other side of a building. It also can't tell me where all the burglar alarms are in an area. But the biggest fault of the mobile phone is in the evidence system. You don't actually have to find any evidence. The mobile phone conveniently points you at the closest piece of evidence and tells you how far away it is. It even tells you how many pieces of evidence there are on that map. So there's no investigation at all. You can just follow the mobile phone around and it will tell you where the evidence is. Only thing it doesn't do is tell you what level it's on if you're in a building. So the evidence system doesn't really add anything to the story, and neither does the capturing people with warrants. You'll get told at the start of a level how many people with warrants there are on that level, and the mobile phone will point them out with a symbol over their head, and it just doesn't add anything to the game, because even if you capture all the people on the level with warrants, it adds nothing to the actual story. But the best example of how bolted on these features feel is the non-lethal takedowns. So in this game you can flash your badge at an enemy and he will put his hands up. If you keep your gun on him, he'll drop his gun and then you can arrest him. But you can do that to up to 3 people in a group. And so it becomes massively overpowered because all the levels are designed so you never get groups of more than 3 people. It wouldn't be so bad if the AI wasn't as dumb as a brick. It will quite happily have a guy stood there looking in the other direction while you take down his mate 5 feet behind him. The enemies just feel engineered so that you can use stealth and the non-lethal takedowns. It's not like you're having to work for it, they're already positioned there for you in most of the cases. But if you decide to go out and be gung-ho and shoot people, then that's even less immersive than using the takedown system, because quite quickly in this game you get a vast selection of guns to use. You're playing an American detective, so of course you're going to have a pistol, maybe a shotgun in the trunk of your car, and if you're going somewhere dangerous you might have an M16. that sounds perfectly logical. The came across a different gun laying on the floor from an enemy you killed, picking it up and using that, that's logical too. But instead you can unlock any gun that's in the multiplayer in the single player. So as a police detective you can run around with a silenced AKM and a Desert Eagle. Prefer a MAC-10. Can you honestly imagine a detective walking out of a police station with an AKM on his back and a MAC-10 on his hip? Add to that these weapon and ammo supply boxes are littered all over the map and you can change your loadout at will. It really doesn't feel like a police shooter. But by far the worst crime that this single player does is to be dull. In places it is incredibly dull. The opening episode is about 45 minutes long, and essentially it's a tutorial where you cruise around the city for a bit but can't get out of the car or do anything other than look out of the window. You then walk through a city block. Again, you can't basically looking at the pretty scenery. Its first 2 episodes of this game are really just an hour and a quarter long tutorial. What most shooters would show you in that really dull 15-minute prologue where you're going through training, this game takes an hour and a quarter to show you, and putting a little message on screen to tell you what key you need to press to do an action. It pauses the game, puts up a full screen display, and then tells you what key you've got to press and what will happen when you press it. It's annoyingly dull at the start. Even when the game gets into its flow, you'll find there are sections where you're just driving down a desert road for 10 minutes. Not escaping from anybody or really going anywhere, just driving down a normal desert road. No other cars around. There are very few long continuous action scenes. There's quite a few scenes where you're travelling around with little pockets of action, and it's all very linear. You're basically just going down the route it tells you. If you completed those bits of action, you can't actually move on to the next one straight away because you have to hang around and use your phone to try and find the evidence. Because it's a linear game, you can't go back and find it later. In these clips you've seen me just gunning my way through it, because this is the second time I've played this episode. I've had to go back and do it again because I didn't find the evidence the first time through. And if you don't find all the evidence, you can't complete the little side quests and you don't get your battle pack reward. Will you be getting multiplayer rewards for completing the side quests in the single player? In Battlefield 4 you got guns as rewards for actually doing the main storyline. In this you get battle pack rewards for doing side quests which have nothing to do with the story. They've dressed Hardline up as a story-driven episodic first-person cop shooter. It's really just the same as Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. It's a very linear first-person shooter single player. Maybe if you're really into stealth games and don't find them tediously dull, you'll enjoy playing the Hardline single player in that style. But as a shooter, it's just too dull. But honestly, the stealth aspects of the game aren't handled that well and aren't very satisfying. Anyone wish there was more stealth in Battlefield? So my verdict on the Battlefield Hardline single player is it's really just another Battlefield single player.